Welcome to Attenuation, a weekly podcast where two friends come together to drink beer, discuss beer styles and trends, and just generally ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer. If you enjoy your time with us, we invite you to become a weekly listener and subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, here is this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to episode 48 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
Hello.
How's it going, sir?
Awesome.
You ready to talk and drink some beer?
Always.
Okay, good.
I'm not always ready to talk, but always ready to drink beer.
I got bad news for you, friend.
We're recording a podcast?
Yeah, this is a podcast. You're going to have to talk. But you also get to drink beer, and I've already seen what you're going to drink, and I'm jealous. But we'll get to that. So today's topic is beer documentaries.
Yeah, I watched a couple this week after briefly talking about them last episode, and we're going to report on them. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, I had a good time. I watched only one of them. You're a little bit ahead of me, but we can definitely discuss that one because it was very thought-provoking for us in many ways. Okay, so before we get to any of that, we got to do our favorite segment of the show, and that's drinking beer. So I will introduce my beer, give some nose notes, and then I pass it over to Steven to do the same before we enjoy. So I am drinking, two things. My beer fridge is running low, dangerously low. So I'm going to have to restock it. I have a lot of stuff in there, but a lot of it is barrel-aged stouts that are aging. And I think I've learned my lesson a little bit of drinking those on the recording nights. I always pay for it the next day at work. But in honor of the documentary I watched, I have a Sierra Nevada. And this is Wild Little Thing, which is their slightly sour ale. And I would basically classify this as like a gateway sour. So if you want to experiment with maybe something that's a little sour, this is a good place to start. So this is a fruited kettle sour. It's 5.5% ABV, and it says it has guava, hibiscus, and strawberry notes.
Interesting.
And the one fun thing about this beer is it's pink.
Just like the can is pink.
Yep. So it pours, like no joke, like pink red, and then it has a really effervescent and vigorous head. And it really does smell like strawberries and hibiscus. And a little bit of that, like a yeasty smell, and a little bit of that sour, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but you know you're going to pucker a little bit when you take a sip. So.
A little lactic acid in
there. Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Thanks, co-host.
No problem. I got
my back on the nose notes. Okay, what are you drinking today?
Okay, well, I am doing a side-by-side tasting because I fancy, I drink fancy beer.
You are fancy today.
Jason called it last week. When I edited and listened to the episode, that was my favorite part. That's fancy beer. Okay, so I have a side-by-side tasting. The first beer is called Citraquench'L. It is a all citra hopped IPA from Heist Brewery in Charlotte, North Carolina, 7.1%. And I wanted to do something fun since I also had a can of Toppling, Goliath, Pseudo, which is an all citra hopped pale ale. So not a complete apples comparison here, although Pseudo kind of does ride the line of being a hazy IPA. They kind of blur the line between pale ale and IPA. So I figured it was fairly close. Citraquench'L, I looked it up. It's 99 on Beer Advocate. Is the highest rated Beer Advocate beer out of North Carolina. So it's definitely
a worthy contender. Yeah.
Pseudo I think carries the world class 100 on Beer Advocate, and it will always be number one in my heart. I was telling Jason I really wanted to do this blind, so I was hoping my wife could maybe blind the beers from me, but she went to sleep, so.
You're up too late for that. So I told Steven in the pre-roll he's given this beer that he's never tasted a shot at the king. So I'm a little worried. What if your king gets dethroned? By the way, it also carries the 99.
Oh, so the Pseudo, really?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was 100 for sure.
Yeah, they're equally matched.
Okay, so I'm going to do some nose notes first. I'm going to do nose notes on the Pseudo first.
Okay.
I remember why I love this beer every time I open it. So, some really sweet mango aromas. That's what I love about this beer is the mango aromas that come off of it. Just like a hint of citrus, like grapefruit, orange, maybe a touch of pineapple as well. And also a little bit of like a sweet dank too. So it is a very sweet smelling beer, but it really hits all the notes. But mango is the number one smell coming off that beer. So both these beers, they look almost exactly alike. Pseudo is a touch lighter in color. They're both pretty like pale orange colors. Very similar head. The Citraquench'L is looking almost a little bit more effervescent. The head on the Pseudo looks a little bit more like proteiny to me, like holding firmer. The Citraquench'L carbonation is a little bit lighter. Oh, okay.
It's different.
This is much more orange.
Okay.
Orange and pineapple is much stronger. I'm not getting mango. This is why I love side by side.
Yeah, it really clarifies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Way more orangey and citrusy. Pseudo number one flavor coming off of that is mango, but they both smell very sweet.
Okay, if you had to pick one based just on aroma, which one's winning?
Pseudo.
Okay. Oh, it doesn't look good for the challenger.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Cheers, sir.
Cheers.
Okay, so I wouldn't actually I take it back. I don't think this is a gateway sour. Well, it kind of is, but it's not really sour. It's it's what I would describe as tart, but not sour. So again, though, I think if I could taste this like at the very beginning of my beer journey, I might be like, "Whoa, that's sour." But who knows?
Right.
But I'm desensitized. So, but you do get the strawberry and guava like in the beginning with the tartness, and then a little bit of like bread malt flavor. And then hibiscus definitely in the finish. It's kind of light bodied, maybe light to medium bodied, and then the finish is pretty dry. It's not sweet at all. You would think it's going to be like really sweet, but it's not really that sweet. It's mostly just tart. So I think it's definitely something to try if you hadn't tried it. I do think it'd be a good gateway into like sours or kettle sours. So yeah, it's good. I would drink it again. It doesn't blow me away, but it's not bad.
I'm trying to think, like, in the history of Sierra Nevada, like, they haven't done a ton of sour stuff, right? I mean,
no.
They just make, obviously, Otra-Vez.
So, Otra-Vez, and then they have, I can't speak with authority, but they do have, like, Trip Through the Woods. I guess it was a single beer that they did that was called Trip in the Wood. That was, like, it was basically just, like, a way more fancy beer. It came in a big bottle with a cork in it. So so right now they're doing. I
vaguely remember that.
They have something called Brux, which is a domesticated wild ale. So they do some special stuff. So they might have covered some sours in those like special like one-off lines, but generally like in their main lineup, this is the only thing they have right now that's sour. Yeah.
I didn't really think about that till now. I was like, you don't really think of sours from Sierra Nevada, so
they mostly do
other than Otra-Vez.
Yeah, they mostly do IPA.
Yeah.
And then Bigfoot, their barley wine, and then Narwhal is their stout. And if you can get your hands on it, the barrel aged Narwhal is really good.
Old timey favorite for us too.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the first barrel-aged stouts I ever drank.
And did you like it the first time you had it?
I think I did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all drunk at Sierra Nevada Brewery, so...
Yeah. That one I would say...
I probably liked everything.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, who knows? I would say Narwhal is a really good entry point into stouts. And then I think their barrel-aged Narwhal is, again, like a really good entry point into barrel-aged. Sierra Nevada is like the gateway brewery, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to get you into craft beer from macro styles. But and I still like a lot of the stuff they make. Like, it's not to speak down on them, but, like, I think they're definitely a brewery. Like, if you're going to take somebody that's wanting to get in craft brew, they're going to have a good time.
For sure.
Okay, so how was sorry about that tangent. How was your head-to-head?
No, it's okay. This is really, really fun. This is as fun as I thought it might be. And super interesting that you could get two very different beers. Very different beers. But I can see why both these beers are highly rated. I totally get it. Pseudo is, again, a lot of mango in the It kind of follows the aromas there with the flavors. A lot of pine, so mango, pine, some resin, and the bitterness is kind of a grapefruit rind bitterness. So that's kind of where the citrus comes in a little bit with the grapefruit, but it's very much mango, grapefruit, and pine would be my 3 main flavors. And there's a distinct bitterness to this beer. Citraquench'L, had this been like the first IPA I had, or first Hazy, it would definitely probably still rank into my top 10. Like, this is a really good beer. Like, I drink it now, and I prefer the complexity and the bitterness of the Pseudo. Citraquench'L is much sweeter, so I'm getting a ton of blood orange flavor.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, a ton of grapefruit and sweet pineapple. And those are my 3. I'm not getting a lot of vegetal, not getting a lot of pine or resin, just pineapple, a lot of pineapple, especially in the finish. It's very sweet. And blood orange, like a little bit of grapefruit, but blood orange is like the number 1 flavor I'm getting. And it's really smooth, not bitter at all. I don't know, it's really, really good. If I like holding a gun to my head, pick one, I would drink Pseudo. I just love it's got one more layer of complexity on it. But man, if I'm just sitting in a brewery chilling with friends and had Citraquench'L in my hand, I'd be pretty happy.
The way you described it sounds really good.
Yeah, I think you would like it a lot.
Yeah, I like sweet stuff. I have a little bit of a sweet tooth for beer, so the way you described it sounds amazing. All right, I'm going to keep my eyes on this. I don't know how I'll get one out here, but if for whatever reason they have it, I'll definitely pick it up.
Yeah, it was a tab order.
I had a feeling that was from a tab war box.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it did not dethrone Pseudo.
Not quite, but it's very good.
But you said you'd place it in your top 10 IPAs?
Well, I think like if it had been one of my first ones,
okay,
I think it could have played a very important role just because it is sweeter. But now, it's hard to crack that top 10 anyway.
Yeah, sure.
And
but is it still a thumbs up?
Oh, for sure. Like
okay.
I said, that's a great beer.
Okay, cool. That's exciting. I had never heard of that before today, so add another little notch of knowledge into the cap.
You gotta learn your North Carolina beer scene, man.
I guess so. That's really funny. Okay, cool. And that was our drinking beer segment. 2 thumbs up, so that's always a good day. And next we have postscripts where we fix things from previous episodes and beer news. And that's one segment altogether. I don't think we have any postscripts today.
No, like I said, I edited all the stupid things we said out, so we don't need to fix them.
Nice. But we do have beer news.
Yes, this is something I came across just yesterday on Instagram, actually, because I follow Modern Times on Instagram. They announced yesterday that they would be closing 4 of their locations at the end of this week. Kind of pulling back towards, they're a San Diego-based brewery. They're kind of pulling back towards San Diego. So the ones they're closing are Portland, which is by far the farthest away from sort of home base. Oakland, which is the only sort of Northern California location. And they're closing Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, which are out of the remaining 4 that are going to stay open. I think 2 of those are more like San Diego area. 2 of those are Southern LA area. So they're kind of closing 2 of the 4 Los Angeles area locations, and the 2 farther north locations, Oakland and Portland, they're closing. They seem to be kind of sort of bringing it back, trying to stay close. They noted that it was just, because of the pandemic and financial turns and stuff, they couldn't keep all those locations open. So
yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it's sad. It's weird when it's a brewery like Modern Times, because I feel like, I don't know, I just, in my head, some breweries, I'm like, they're fine. I'm sure they're fine, right? Like, they have too many loyal customers, too much national distribution. I'm sure they're fine,
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, my grocery store is full of Modern Times. Not any of the Modern Times I want to drink, but...
yeah. Maybe the fact that they're full of Modern Times.
Oh, yeah, maybe no one's buying Fruitlands.
I love Fruitlands, though, by the way.
No, I actually really like Modern Times, but I like a lot of their real special stuff.
But yes, their special IPAs and special barrel aged stuff is very good. Yeah.
But that's not in my grocery store, unfortunately.
If you ever get a chance to visit the Modern Times tap room in San Diego, it's super fun, and that's where they have the fun stuff on.
That's where you get the fun stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's a bummer because that is definitely like a staple around here, at least. And sounds like you have it in Texas as well.
Yeah, but I do sort of understand. Well, like I said, I don't it's always amazing to me that a brewery like Modern Times would struggle that much, but California's been pretty, fairly restrictive. I think that's probably been tough on some of their like actual physical locations. It's probably different than just distributing their beer around the country.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's competitive. It's so competitive. I mean, like we talked about Rubicon Brewing, they were like the Sacramento staple, one of the OG craft breweries, and they couldn't hang once they started having to compete with so many breweries.
Oh yeah, it's survival of the fittest now, and that gets alluded to in the documentary we watched as well. So
yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully Modern Times will have a good triumphant comeback. Yeah, I'm sure they'll do fine if they sticking to the roots, and then they can re-expand as the ability to do so presents itself.
We have a brewery here in Austin called Fourth Tap, pretty well established brewery here in Austin. They put out a thing on Instagram the other day too, kind of pleading, saying, hey, if you're going to visit a brewery, think about Fourth Tap because we're struggling. So probably a hard thing to put out on Instagram.
Yeah, but I mean, if you need it, squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Right. Might as well, right?
Yeah, if you're going out of business anyways, you might as well.
Might as well see if you can get some people in.
Yeah. All right. So that was our beer news segment. Are you ready to jump into our main topic?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So beer documentaries. We mentioned a few last episode, and we both watched Brewmance.
$4.99 on YouTube.
I think I did Prime Video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I had to pay for it.
Okay, you had to rent it. You had to choose.
It's $3.99.
Oh, you got a deal.
I saved $1.
I feel stupid now. Should have shopped around.
You gotta shop around on those rentals. So this was a fun one, wasn't it?
Yes. Despite them stealing my first podcast name that I couldn't use because it had already been used by this documentary. Brewmance was a really great documentary. I mean, I think we both have a strong appreciation for documentaries. I thought about it actually after talking about it last week, trying to figure out why I like documentaries so much.
Okay.
And what I realized while watching this one is that in like a regular movie, in most movies, there's like some sort of resolution to the problem, some sort of happy ending, you want to call it that. But like, and I always kind of like the movies that don't necessarily have happy endings or whatever. But like, in most like cookie cutter films, that's what's going to happen. But like when you're filming a documentary, you don't really know, right? So one of the main parts of this documentary is following the opening of these two breweries, from these startup breweries. I mean, obviously, they're the final product of the film. They could have been following 4, and they didn't show the 2 that didn't right? But there's some confirmation bias, possibly. But it's just like as they're filming this documentary, they don't really know what's going to happen, and there are these like sort of weird surprises or weird turns that it's nothing you can just script. You're just following real life, which I always think is way more interesting.
It's way more compelling, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this documentary did a really good job of it kind of catered to beer nerds because it had a lot of really influential people in it. And they kind of introduced them, but if you knew nothing about beer, you wouldn't realize that all the titans of craft beer were being put on screen.
For sure.
But then they kind of superimposed that over the story of two groups of people, well, a father and a son, and then a group of 3 friends, I guess, trying to open a brewery from scratch. And it was a really good mix of experience and people trying to get started. So I really liked that.
Well, what's cool, there was a father and son pairing. What did we say their names were? Dan and Jesse.
Dan and Jesse, yeah.
I always sort of think about like the progression of, say, like a professional athlete, right? Like you have to stand out in like multiple lower classes before like a baseball player. You have to stand out. Like you can't be like a mediocre minor league player and expect to like make it to the big leagues, right? You have to be standing out in these like lower leagues. And so I think like a lot of these people who end up thinking, a lot of these home brewers that start thinking like, oh, maybe I could open a brewery with my beer, like they have to be sort of winning awards at like these local competitions. You have to sort of seek out these like homebrew associations, homebrew club, your local, there's always the local homebrew people that get together, and then they start like forming these really small local competitions. And then when you stand out there and you start winning awards there, like those are the people that kind of go on. So you could tell that this father and son had been making very good beer, and it seemed like they did it a lot.
With regularity.
Yeah, we're just constantly doing it and working out recipes and working together and collaborating. And I don't even know what that yeah.
Well, it was also true of the brewer at the other, so that was 10 Mile. The other brewery they cover is Liberation Brewing Company. And it was also true of their brewer. Like, he worked at a bunch of breweries, but then, like, all weekend, every weekend, he would just make his own beer. It's that driven factor. There's a famous story of Lance Armstrong, maybe not famous, but it was in some documentary or whatever I watched of him, where he basically rode up this hill for like 6 hours, and that was his training regimen for the day. And he got to the top, and then they were like packing all the stuff up into the car, and then they said he just took the bike back down off the rack, and he's like, let's go to the bottom, I'm gonna do it again. So like, you just rode your bike for 6 hours up a cliff, and then most normal rational person would be like, wow, that was a massive accomplishment. I'm not touching my bike again for another month. But Lance Armstrong just gets back on his bike and does it again. And it kind of struck me as like, oh, I am not this person. Yeah. And even though these guys, I mean, obviously they're not like Lance Armstrong of brewing, but they have that same kind of character where like they're extremely driven by this as a hobby, so much that it was like a dominant part of their lifestyle. I like drinking beer as a dominant part of my lifestyle, but I don't know about craft brewing. And I don't know if you had that same like realization.
I mean, I've homebrewed 4 or 5 times now. It's a lot of work. Like it's so much cleaning. That's the main thing. There's so much cleaning, and just the planning it takes me, like, to even get to the point where I'm like ready to brew, like to have my brew day. I've been like planning for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they don't have that time. Like they're like brewing so many different beers, and honestly, I don't know who's drinking all this beer
that they're brewing.
Yeah.
I
mean, you have to have like a major party every week, and like have a big one of those like custom made keggerators out of a like a big long cooler, and just have multiple things on tap and have a bunch of people over and just constantly drinking beer. I was like, it's no wonder any of these guys are skinny.
They drink a lot of beer, a lot of liquid bread,
a lot of beer guts on these guys.
Yeah, for sure. But it was fun to see like their passion, especially for and what I liked about the 10 Mile guys, Dan and Jesse, not only did they decide, it was kind of cool too, because I can't remember which one's the father, but he was basically going to transition from his job where he was like a director / accountant / he was basically like a jack of all trades at this
like a local church, I think.
Yeah, like a local church organization. So he had this like tremendous skill set that he could then translate to his brewery, but they also like did everything. So they did a lot of the construction work for the setting up the actual brewery, and that was really cool to see that. But he kind of described like, okay, now I have to like let go of this job, this very like stable source of income that I've been at for like 15 years, and then I'm just gonna like let go, and hopefully like I'm gonna fall, but then the brewery is gonna like catch me as we get it operational. And that was so there was multiple times in this documentary that I was like, oh, I'm not this person either. And that was like the second time of like the risk aversion I have is very high. So I don't think I just like to get my paycheck every month. and give most of it to my mortgage company and then spend some of it on beer and drink that beer. I don't know if I could let go of that and hope that I could make money at my brewery. So that was cool to see that. I'm always fascinated by people that don't carry as high of a risk aversion, that they're willing to like just quit their job and like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And it better succeed because it has to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think in these cases, like I'm sure it has to start from some sort of faith and belief in your beer,
Yes.
right? In your product. Like, you can brew good beer. I thought it was funny. There's a moment around the dinner table with a bunch of other family, and they were like, oh, what beer should we submit to the festival or something? Or what beer should we have at the beer festival? And they're like, our IPA. And that brother was like, no, like you guys haven't quite mastered the IPA yet. And they were just like, what? Yes, we have. Like, have you tasted our IPA?
That was hilarious.
Like, what do you mean we haven't mastered that stuff? So it does come with this sort of belief that you can sell your beer and you can make your beer at a large scale. So, which come to find out, when they sort of briefly talked about that's one of the major hurdles for home brewers who then move to the larger scale brewing, is that scaling up these recipes that you've been working on and perfecting over years and years in a homebrew setting it's like starting from day one, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to learn and that was another thing that gave me so much anxiety. They both really got excited when they got their brewing equipment, but I think they both ordered it from China. But they said like the lead time was like 8 months. I think one of them was waiting for like 8 months to get like all their like boilers and all that stuff. So, and then it all showed up, and then you have to like, we have to put this all together and get it operational. And there was, obviously some hiccups there and some problems there. And yeah, they basically said it's basically like you're starting over from square one, because you got to learn all the ins and outs and intricacies of the equipment.
Well, that's that's what you did at home, right? You have your home brewing equipment, and it is this constant learning. Like, I'm constantly learning about the stuff that I use every time I do it and how to better use it. And they're doing it a lot more often, so they're learning things faster than I am, because I do it like once a year.
Yeah.
I have to relearn a lot of the stuff that I should have already learned. But yeah, I can't even imagine just like all new brewing equipment, huge brewing equipment. Now you're messing with like temperature and all these variables now that you didn't even probably have to think about.
Right. And the control, like controlling a smaller, if you have 5 gallons of water that you're boiling, it's a lot, you can cool that down a lot faster than you have hundreds of gallons of boiling water, right? So,
yeah, how to change the temperature of that water just takes so much more energy and time.
So
I don't even know how anybody does it.
Me either. But I'm glad some people do it.
I mean, honestly, on the daily, I'll be driving by like, there's a lot of construction around me, and it's just mind blowing to me that even gets done, and it gets done in like some sort of, at some level of quality where like people can live in these houses or do business in these buildings, and pouring concrete and big structures that I'm like, if you did that wrong, like it could just fall over. But I don't know. It's just like, that stuff gets done. It's even just like when they're walking around in their like sort of empty brewery, spaces, planning and doing all this work and construction and welding and stuff. I don't like, I know like it's not my field, so it kind of blows my mind. I'm sure there's things in my field that blow other people's minds that I'm like, I don't even think about. But it's just amazing to me that stuff gets done, and it gets done well, and it like comes together eventually. Like they both these breweries have opening nights, and I'm like, how would you even get to that point where you're like, okay, now we're ready to open?
Yes.
Yesterday we weren't ready to open, but now we're ready to open. Like, what is that even like?
The chaos. And they did a good job. I think they showed some of the disagreements, because you have to, obviously these are partnerships and personalities clash, and like you have the brewer who's like the artist, but then you need the manager. You need someone like with a head for figures and, this kind of logistic coordination and stuff like that. But like those personalities are usually going to clash.
I mean, probably end up being like getting tagged as the bad guy most of the time. Like, no, you can't do that. We can't afford it, or da 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 da.
Exactly. But you need both people, right? So there's that whole aspect of it, like the whole people and drama and stuff like that. So it's amazing. The chaos of small business seems completely untenable for my personality. But
Well, I'm reading. I haven't gotten too far into it, but I'm reading the book from Steve Hindy at Brooklyn Brewery, and it's him and his partner writing the book, and they kind of go back, like each writing a chapter
cool.
back and forth about starting a brewery, starting a business. And it is pretty interesting, like, it tested their friendship hardcore.
Oh yeah.
And so they give a lot of tips on like how you even do that. How do you even start a business with your friend, and what does that look like, and how do you resolve issues and arguments? And
yeah, I don't think you're supposed to make your friends your business partners. Isn't that like basic
that's probably a
advice?
good tip.
That's why we always say the only way we'd ever start a brewery together is if we were independently wealthy. Because then we could fail. Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
Still friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It certainly, there were certainly some tense moments that were like making me cringe. Like, I don't like to watch people argue.
Yeah, and you weren't even there.
I'm like, no, guys, it'll be fine. It's gonna be fine. Don't argue.
Yeah, drink beer and be friends. So, but yeah, did it also make you want to go to these two breweries?
Totally.
Yeah,
I was like,
bad.
all right. Of course, I immediately Googled them to see if they were like still open
in business. Yeah.
I Googled like halfway through the documentary. I was like, do they open? Do they open? I couldn't wait. I just had to see. That's me.
Are you also one of those people that reads the last chapter of the book first or whatever?
I feel like there's not enough information about the last chapter. It's confusing because you don't know any of the story. I've tried, but yeah.
That's so funny. You gotta live in the moment and you gotta wait to see what happens. But yeah, I want to go and be like, I saw your documentary. But they'd probably be annoyed because probably everyone says that. But I still want to go do it anyways.
Okay, back to that whole thing, waiting till the end. Would you be able to, like, if there was a big sports game you couldn't watch, like DVR it and then watch it later, even though it's already finished?
100%.
I can't do that.
You have to know because it already happened.
It's happened, so.
But it hasn't happened inside your brain.
Yeah, but I can't get past the fact that it's already done, and I can literally type it into Google and find out what the score was.
Yeah, but
then, so what I would do though is I would get the final score, be like, oh, like, hey, we won 10-8. All right, and then I would go back and watch like all the highlights. I would watch the game by knowing that they won, and I would feel better about it.
You would feel better knowing the result?
Yeah.
That's weird to me.
Because if they lost, I'd be like, meh, I won't watch then.
Oh, I see. You're saying since you know they won, then you'll watch.
Yeah.
But if you know they lost, you'd be like, meh.
Yeah, I mean, like, do I really need to watch that game? No.
All of this is foreign to me, Steven.
Really? It's like sports in general?
No, the fact that you can't just watch and see how it unfolds. You want the spoilers.
Not if it's already happened. If it's already happened, I might as well just read about it.
Every book's already been written. Do you just want to know how they all end?
Yeah. That's why I watch the movies. I don't read them.
Do you read the Wikipedia entry or whatever for the movie so you know how it's going to end before you watch it?
No.
Well, why? This is the same thing.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll explore this later.
Well, I did halfway through the documentary look.
Yeah, that's why
breweries existed. And I was like, oh, it'll be a happy ending.
Yeah, you wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be a sad ending. They both just go out of business. No one comes to their opener.
Like, dang. But I would just watch anyway because I think that would be good drama.
Yeah, probably.
But I immediately just wanted to look them up and see, like, oh, I should visit these breweries. That's why I mainly Googled to see if I could even go.
They're both in Cali, so you got to come visit me. Yeah.
Oh, we have to talk about that. So.
Oh, right.
So one of these breweries is in Long Beach, and they're a Liberation Brewing Company. So a lot of their like merchandise and stuff had LBC, which was kind of like a tie-in, right? So it was their breweries, the acronym for their brewery, but it was also an acronym for Long Beach, California, which you see a lot around Long Beach is LBC. Well, there was another brewery called Beechwood Brewery. They'd been established for like almost 10 years.
Yes.
In Long Beach. And they had a beer called LBC IPA. Well, they conveniently waited until like a week before Liberation is supposed to open, and they send them a what was like Facebook Messenger message that said, "Hey guys, you can't use the LBC. We already do that. We do the LBC IPA." And they're like, "What?" Like, we have all this merch. We're about to open next week. Like,
yeah, I
what?
think they actually sent him a cease and desist because they got an actual physical letter.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was nuts. It was a good tie into our last episode of like the crazy lawsuits.
Yeah.
But yeah, they basically like ignored it.
Yeah, I think so. That's what it seemed like. It seemed that they were like, well, doesn't seem like they have a leg to stand on, and they just called their bluff, basically.
And they were really sad because I know a couple of them said they remember going to Beechwood Brewery and just being like amazed by like what they were drinking there, and then smash cut to like them starting a brewery and getting like a cease and desist. So
That's so sad.
I know, it was reminding me of it's the quote like, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And I was like, who are these Beechwood guys that are like, they're basically like suing a former version of themselves. They were a fledgling brewery, and now they're established. They're going to like stomp on other people trying to do it, and I didn't like them at all. Very much did not like them.
Different environment nowadays, man. It's more competitive.
It doesn't matter. They lost their heart. But then there was a redemption arc, and you should watch the documentary. I guess we're like spoiling everything. But if you're like Steven, you don't care. You'll watch it anyways.
Yeah, you
but
didn't
if you're
say
like
spoiler alerts before the.
Yeah,
I'll put it on the post on the Instagram.
Put spoiler alerts. But there is a redemption arc, so then I was like, okay, maybe they're not so bad after all. But they did they did also allude to the fact that like, and I thought that was pretty interesting, like we are post peak like craft beer demand. So in the beginning, demand was like drastically outstripping supply for craft beer when it was getting really popular. So you could open a brewery and kind of be working your kinks out for like 6 months, and you'd be fine because people would still come. But now we've like hit this inflection point where we're like peak popularity of craft brews in the past, and we have like more breweries than like we've ever had in the U.S. Yeah. So it is true, the competition is brutal now. So you have to be on your A game like in the beginning, or you're going to go out of business. And kind of like what we've seen and we mentioned previously, like that, there's a lot of established breweries that are like foundational to cities that have gone under because they can't keep up with all the competition. So yeah, maybe they got to defend their turf a little bit, but it was a feel bad man moment.
Yeah. And I thought like even they said, hey, we just won't make we won't make an LBC IPA, we promise not to do that. Just kind of like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, I see how there could be like a few misunderstandings. We'll work those out. And I don't know. It didn't make me feel that great about Beechwood. But
yeah, we won't be visiting them.
Yeah, but it does seem like that maybe they had a moment of clarity.
Yeah.
Realized that it is weird. You have this like competition, all competing for a share of the beer market, but it's also this like sort of hobby kind of thing, this community sort of thing. Like, no, like craft, like you're in this club.
Yeah.
Right? And you're kind of all in this club together. So it is weird.
I mean, I guess I'm romanticizing it a little bit, but it's like exactly what you said. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like a hobby and a culture. So yeah, I guess they all are competing. And I guess the reality is that you can go out of business, so you do have to kind of defend your turf. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's about drinking beer, dude. Like,
yeah. Well, there was a cool thing. Yeah. Towards the end of the documentary, it shows them going to the Great American Beer Festival, which, of course, and every scene that they were shooting on the floor of the beer festival, I was like, wait, 2018, we were there, right? Yeah, we were there. And then every scene on the floor, I was just looking in the background like, can I see me? Can I see
me?
My
come
gosh,
on. That's hilarious.
Never saw myself. I was very sad about that. But there's a cool moment there where they said, the especially to like new breweries, smaller breweries, like winning a Great American Beer Festival medal is huge, right? Like putting that out there and saying like, hey, our IPA won gold at the beer festival, it's crazy. You get like a lot of press, a lot of new customers that way. So it's really important to a lot of these breweries. But it was cool because a lot of them said like, yeah, like when you find out who won gold, like your first thought is, oh, I want to go try that beer. Even, brewer to brewer, their first thought is like, oh, I need to go try that. So
yeah, exactly. Because like the passion is
Yeah,
a lot of these guys
what
are
did they do?
insanely passionate about beer. That's like the driving force that caused them to open the brewery in the first place. But yeah, I don't know. I guess if you got a roof over your head, you got to do what you got to do. But I do think, and we talked about this a little bit last episode, like there's no such thing as bad press. Like, I don't know.
I guess there could be.
I guess there is, but like, I don't know. I don't know how much you win by like cease and desisting people over like initials and like. If no one's going to confuse the two, and like, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to say on that one?
No, I liked it. I recommend it.
So overall, good documentary. And I did like they sort of weaved these two stories also along with just like beer education, talking about like the ingredients of beer and stuff.
Yeah, it had a little something for everyone because it had the story and the drama that kept you entertained. It had like the very basic stuff, which I understood most of it, but you always learn something new every time someone goes over the basics. And then it had like the titans of industry like weighing in. So it was cool to hear from them. So yeah, it was really well-rounded. I think it's a good documentary for the advocate or for like the amateur or the new person to beer, but also to someone that has some knowledge.
I will say one of the most interesting things, and I think we should probably do a full deep dive episode on this, which when I pitched this to my wife, she was like, well, that's weird. But it was a deep dive into water.
Yeah.
And she was like, why would you do a whole episode on water? And I was like, well, it's actually like really important. What I didn't realize, I guess, was that what these breweries do now is essentially they make whatever water they need. So they reverse osmosis everything out of the water, and then they build the mineral qualities of the beer back to where they want it to be, and they add the minerals, to a certain pH and a certain minerality to their water depending on what type of beer they're brewing.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's cool too to think about the reason they brewed lagers in Czechoslovakia is because the water lends itself to that beer style. Mm-hmm. The reason they brew Guinness in Ireland is because the water lends itself to creating that style of beer. So, long time ago, brewers were subject to whatever water they had and what beer fit that water the best. Now you can just make your water however you want it to make it and brew that beer. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. They get some insight into that, and that's crazy, but it makes sense. It's like they're dialing in and controlling everything else. You might as well control the water. It's a huge part of the beer.
Yeah. I watched a cool documentary. Well, not a documentary. It's not a cool show. It's a stupid show. It's called Down to Earth, and it's hosted by Zac Efron. Okay. And he teams up with this guy. He's like a health guru guy. He teams up with him, and they kind of travel around the world, and they do each episode's on some sort of different thing about health. And anyway, they did a water episode, and there was a French restaurant in LA, and one of the guys there is a water sommelier.
What?
They questioned whether that was actually a real thing or just made up, but this guy is like super knowledgeable and passionate about water, and he was having they did a whole water tasting with like different spring waters from different places around the world, and like mineral, I think they call it TDS or something, like total dissolved solutes or something. Okay. And they ranged from like 1,400 to like 23,000 or something. And some of these waters, people they were like, this tastes like Alka-Seltzer. Like there were so many minerals in the water, dissolved in the water, that you could just like taste every, like metallic and crazy. Yeah, that's just interesting. Like these are just waters. Like this is just pure water. This is water how it comes out of the ground, not, purified or filtered or anything like that. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so you can imagine if you're using those to start your beer, it's going to have a profound effect.
I need to think about that more next time I homebrew, because I don't know, a lot of my water, probably most of the water I use was filtered. So it's going to lack some sort of like mineral depth to it. Yeah. And pH, pH level is going to change.
Yeah, you got to dial your water in, Steven.
I know.
Rookie mistake.
Apparently I got tested. But yeah, so it was a cool documentary. But anyway, it would be cool to do an episode all about water and how that affects the beer. So I'm currently watching about like halfway through another beer documentary that we talked about last week. It's called Kings of Beer. So I didn't realize Budweiser. So Budweiser has all these brewing operations all around the world.
Okay.
And every month, these breweries are sending their Budweiser beer that they're brewing.
Okay.
Sending it to where? Columbus, Ohio, I think is or St. Louis. I can't remember. Anyway. Okay. Wherever they're sending it to like the main location, and they go through a tasting, and they get rated by like the highest ups, best tasters in the Budweiser company. And each month they get rated, and at the end of the year they award a Budweiser cup to the Budweiser brewing location that has like performed the best throughout the year.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And
so they're like internally pitting the company against itself to make the best possible Budweiser.
Yeah.
Huh.
At first I was like, oh, this is like they're trying to find the brewery that like makes the best American lager, because that's what they kind of pitched it as. And then I'm starting to realize like, oh no, these are all Budweiser employed brewers, and they have to make Budweiser. First of all, can you imagine tasting Budweiser,
like 20 Budweisers side by side,
and being like, "Ooh, this
one's the best." I could never do that, but sommeliers, how do you say that?
Yeah, sommeliers, cicerones.
Yeah. Those guys are insane. Like I remember I watched on YouTube like a vodka one, and there was a couple of them, and they had like 20 vodkas, like Grey Goose, all those, everything you can imagine, and they blind tasted like all 20, and they got like all 20 right. Like multiple people did this. And I'm like, how? Like vodka? Like obviously there's differences they're detecting, but vodka is kind of like heralded to be like, isn't the sign of like a good vodka is that it's like flavored?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And they can rank those. So I assume if you're the best Budweiser taster, they'd all taste different to you.
That's what it seems like. I mean, there's pulling out tasting notes and flavors and stuff. What's interesting is, like they devote a lot of the documentary to talking about like how difficult a style it is to brew, because so there's kind of something to this, like because it's a beer that doesn't have a lot of flavor, like a lot of strong flavors,
right? You
can't mask mistakes.
Oh.
Right, like there's very, very little room for error, because any oxidation, any sulfur flavor, any like off flavor is going to be noticeable, because you don't have any other flavors to hide those with.
They're just going to come to the front.
Yeah, because you don't have a whole lot of strong flavors to mask those other off flavors. So I don't know, like it's kind of nice, because I am kind of gaining an appreciation for Budweiser in a way, because I think
macro styles.
I mean, even just appreciating, what a lager is and how difficult it is to brew a good lager. So, and the difficulties that there may be with brewing a beer that isn't crazy flavorful, because you can't make mistakes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, now I want to watch that too now. That's pretty fascinating.
On that note, I have to go back to the Brewmance one, and my favorite line from that documentary, spoiler alert here. So I think it was Larry Bell from Bell's Brewery, and they were talking about sort of like IPAs and how they were perceived at the beginning. And he described his first time drinking an IPA was, it tastes like your cat ate all your weed and then peed on a Christmas tree.
It's amazing.
I was like, yeah, that's kind of true.
Yeah, I loved how they basically said they didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's experience of an IPA the first time they drink it is like, oh.
Oh, yikes. Now they got hazy IPAs, nothing like that.
I know. You can ease yourself in, and you can take a...
You can take baby steps into the IPA
exactly.
style. Diving straight into a West Coast double IPA is probably like drinking cat piss.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Anyway, I like that line. Yeah, King of Beers so far are really good. Has me like, I never knew I could be this excited about watching people taste Budweiser, but seems like maybe it could be a little bit more complex than I gave it credit.
Yeah, see, when you learn about things, you start to appreciate them, even if you didn't like them beforehand.
It kind of like does make me want to open a Budweiser and like taste it and be like, what?
You're still not gonna like it, but I mean, it has its place, like we always say. But you already know you're the beer snob.
I could drink a Budweiser, man.
Okay, next episode you should.
I don't know why I would, but I could.
Do Budweiser for our beer tasting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's like putting a beer advocate review on Budweiser.
There's a bunch of them up there.
No, I mean, I'm glad people do. I'm that way about anything for reviews on stuff because I don't take the time to review a lot of stuff online, but I'm always surprised that people do. I don't comment on like Reddit comment streams ever, but there will be comment streams of like 15,000 comments under a thing. I'm like, that's so many people commenting on. Like, what's the point?
They're never going to get read, right? Only the top comments are going to get read.
But I do appreciate some of them. Some of the comments I read are like, oh, that's really smart.
By the way, you want a life pro tip?
What's the life pro tip?
My wife taught me this. Well, if you're a normal person, she reads a lot of books too, but you can bring a book on a plane. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do something, like you want to kind of feel like you're online. See, nowadays all the planes have Wi-Fi, but you usually have to pay for it. So if you don't want to pay for it, find a really interesting, like Ask Reddit that has like 30,000 comments and let that whole thread load before you get on the plane and then just like read through it. And you get to see like you go on like all sorts of journeys because like the comments will get tangential and like I don't know. You would never ever take the time to like read through all those comments, but like you're stuck on a plane for like 8 hours, you have nothing to do. It's like a weird thing to do. So there you go.
I like that.
Yeah.
That might actually be fun.
Because I saw her doing it one day. I was like, how are you reading Reddit? You don't have internet right now. And then she told me that's what she does. She's like, oh, that seems kind of clever.
Smart.
Yeah, she's smart.
I learned some stuff from the comments. Some people are super smart.
Yeah.
And take the time. They're super smart and they take the time to comment.
That's
on
the
Reddit
weird
stream.
part. Yeah, I've never.
Weird.
I don't think I've ever commented on anything. I think the majority of people don't comment.
Yeah, I don't even upvote stuff.
So I use the upvote downvote for my own purposes. I only upvote things that I want to look back at later. I'm like. So.
Yeah, I don't up or downvote anything.
Yeah,
because I think it's weird.
You think upvote downvote is weird?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the point of Reddit, right? Because then the most upvoted stuff comes to the top.
Yeah,
but
you get to see what the hive mind says. You should look at.
I appreciate all the other people that upvote and downvote, so that I don't have to.
Yeah, so you don't have to. All right, far enough. We're in Tangentville.
Tangentville, party of two.
We've gone fully off the deep end. Okay, well, this is Attenuation. This is a podcast about beer. Does it sound?
Oh, you're wrapping it up?
I think so. Do you have more to add?
No, I just thought it'd be fun to ask.
We're 48 episodes in, Steven. You know this is.
I just wanted to make you be like, oh, you have more?
I thought you're trolling me now.
And
how much of those?
No,
you must have finished both those beers.
No, double fisting now.
Yeah, you are. Okay, don't interrupt me. So our Instagram is attenuation.podcast. And our email is contact.attenuation@gmail.com. Okay, you can interrupt me now because you have to. Your line's coming. So this was episode 48 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
Not doing it.
Are you rebelling?
That's me.
And yeah, we were saying...
The silly one.
Yeah, you are silly today. That's okay, I'm silly too. And we are saying cheers and adieu. We'll see you next week for episode 49.
All right, cheers, buddy.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Attenuation, a beer podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram or Facebook for more fun content. Catch you next week. Cheers!